Eric, so we don't have to worry about forgetting. How's that? And we can just keep talking here as we're going along.
Yeah, I was looking for the recording icon on the left, and I didn't see it. I see it now. I see it now.
Okay, so we're good. Everybody's still coming. Here we go. And a few more people waiting. It's interesting to see how Zoom works these days. So we're in good shape. Do you have a favorite platform to work on, Kathrine, or you just can't?
I do Zoom, obviously. I do the Northern Kentucky podcast we do on Teams, but I like the Zoom interface better, like as a viewer or as a participant. I like it better because on Teams you can only see like 4 people at a time, but there's more bells and whistles there, and it integrates better with programs. So it's just whatever the organization likes, we use. And then of course we use Facebook and that sort of thing too, but that's a totally different animal.
Totally different animal. So I understand it's a little harder because it's live and a little finicky.
It's also
sometimes.
Backwards. It's very confusing unless you feel it. You see everything backwards, which throws you off a bit.
Okay. Well, we were glad when we decided to pivot and put all our job search programs online. Our digital branch manager said, use Zoom. So that's the direction we went.
For bigger groups, I agree. I think it works the best. Absolutely.
Yeah. And as the library, we feel we're not sharing financial data. We're not sharing personal information or anything like that. So we're an educator. So I think we're good. All right, so I think we're at 7:02, and I'll be happy to continue to admit people as we go on, but we want to go ahead and get started this evening. So welcome everybody. I'm Natalie Rupert. I'm the Manager of Workforce Development for the Kenton County Public Library System. We welcome you all here this evening to hear Kathrine Nero. Just so everyone knows, this session is being recorded, and we will be posting it tomorrow on the library's Job Search Central site. So if you haven't seen it yet, you just go to kentonlibrary.org, scroll down a little and click on the Job Search Central button. It'll take you right there. And we have Kathrine on as under one of our advanced job search programs, actually. So we asked Kathrine to join us this evening, and we'd also ask you that you please stay muted throughout her presentation. If you have a question, you can type it into the chat, and we'll be happy to ask until later on this evening. But we asked Kathrine to join us to talk about the major career transition she went through, and as a public figure, how difficult that can sometimes be. And we work every day with people that are transitioning careers or that are unhappy in their jobs and looking for promotions. So I thought it would be awesome to hear her story. And then after that, she's going to share what everybody wants to know right now, which is, how do you handle this virtual situation? How do you look halfway decent if you have an upcoming job interview? Are you going to a networking meeting, or you're just attending events? So she is going to go over those with us, and we're going to have plenty of time for questions this evening. So I think many people know that she was an anchor for WCPO. She runs Facebook Live daily for the Cincinnati Enquirer, big Northern Kentucky Greater Cincinnati person. I didn't want to say too much about her since she's going to be telling her story. So I will leave it to you, Kathrine, to take it away. Thanks.
All right, Natalie, thank you so much. And it's nice talking to so many of you before this officially got started, but I very much appreciate it. And I think the Kenton County Library has been we've been fans for a long time. My daughter's an intern or a volunteer there, and they've been great to me as well, so I'm glad to help out with this as well. And so let's take you all the way back. So yes, my name is Kathrine Nero. For those of you who don't know, I worked at what I like to call the station that shall not be named. You Harry Potter fans will totally understand that. And so, yes, WCPO, I worked there for 21 years. So let me get you there before we talk about the tradition or transition, I should say. So I have always known what I wanted to do. In the 5th grade, I decided I wanted to be on TV. I don't know why. I was not particularly great at any kind of television version of things. I was not particularly outgoing. In fact, I was very shy all the way through middle school, high school. And to the point where my mother at one point, she tells me now, she almost pulled me aside and said, hey, you know, you're going to have to, you know, kind of buck up a little bit if you're going to ask people for interviews. But this is what I always wanted to do. Single-minded about it, never really varied in any of that. And, you know, I went through college. I went through internships. This is what I wanted to do. It's just kind of on that path, kept going. And I started out doing sports. I did sports in Memphis, was on air doing sports there for 2 years or so, right out of college. Lucked out in getting a job that is, you know, unheard of back then, even now a little bit. But just as a quick aside, don't ever tell a boss, hey, I'll do it for free, because they will take you up on it. And that actually happened at one point while I was there. But so I started working there, and a couple of years later, a sports job opened up here in Cincinnati. And back then, and I know many of you remember the names John Popovich and Denny Jansen, two of the greatest people on earth and two of the absolute best people to work with. I learned more there than I may have in any other place in all of my days. So that was a wonderful transition from Memphis, where I grew up, to here. And then, you know, it got to the point where, and I know we've all been through this as well, you know, sports are scheduled as news goes. News is not a scheduled event, right? The breaking news, we hear it all the time. You don't really know when things are going to happen, but in sports you do. And you know when it is? Nights, weekends, and holidays. So I got to the point where I was like, you know, I love doing this, but hey, you know, I just got married. We want to have kids. What should we do? Let's think about something else. And so one of my bosses said, hey, you know what? We're expanding our morning show. What about that? Now I need to back up a little bit and say, I was the kid in college who refused to take classes in single-digit hours because that was too early for me. 9 o'clock was too early. But that quickly changed when I got this job. And so I was very, very lucky to get the job on Good Morning Tri-State. When it started, it was 5 to 7 a.m. By the time I left, it was 4:30 to 7 a.m. And I'll answer the question everybody has, which is, what time did you wake up? 1:30 in the morning is when I woke up. It's crazy. And I think back now, I had a meeting the other day at 8, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. Wow, how things have changed. So I did that job for 15 years. And if you had asked me, I would have told you I loved it. And I did. I, you know, loved sharing the news with people. The mornings are kind of where I think I am most well suited, as far as, you know, in the evenings, you get a little bit more formal and that sort of thing. As far as news anchors go, mornings were perfect for me. And so there we were, chugging along. And, you know, I was a veteran there. I'd been there for, you know, on that shift for 15 years, you know, and about February of 2018, my co-anchor, who'd been there for several years as well, got fired, or his contract was not renewed. And I remember thinking, that is awful. And he still is a very good friend of mine. And I remember thinking, this is awful. I can't believe they did this. But weirdly, in the back of my head, I was like, well, they can't fire me. I'm the only one left. I know that's horribly selfish to think, but of course that's, you know, I'm like, push that back down back there. But several months later, there I was in the exact same position. And he actually was one of the first people I called. So I just recently rewrote my LinkedIn bio. And I started it with the sentence, you're not supposed to start a bio with what you used to be. But I think in this case, that transition, and that's what we're talking about today, that transition is really, at this point, what people know me for. They knew me on television, certainly, but it's that transition, and a very public transition in a time that frankly was, you know, it was surreal, and it was sudden, and it was embarrassing to get fired. And I know so many people have gotten fired, and I know this now. I didn't know that at the time. But that transition, without where I was, I wouldn't be where I am. So I am fine starting with former this to become current that, if that makes any sense. So after there I was, you know, essentially, this was July of 2018. In my mind, I'm like, well, what now? I have no marketable skills. I read things other people write. That's what I would tell you. And I love my job. And now what am I going to do? And I didn't know. And again, I was in the middle of a contract. The station had a perfectly legitimate out in the middle of the contract, as they do in everybody's contracts, and they exercised it. We believe it was the first time in the history of the station it had ever been exercised, but it was exercised. So what are you going to do? So I started looking ahead. And I got to the point now where I know that this was the change I needed. It was the pivot I didn't know I needed. And now looking back, it's, they always say hindsight is 20/20. I hesitate to even say 20/20 after all that's gone down this year, but it is definitely true in this case. What happened immediately after I got fired is, it was one of those situations where, I called three people. I called my husband, my best friend, and my former co-anchor, Chris Riva. And I remember saying to my husband, I think I just got fired. It was that kind of out of the blue. And, the more you think about it, it's like, well, there's really no think about it. It's a definite. So I didn't know what I was going to do. So of course you wallow in self-pity for a while and maybe a bottle of wine or 6. But then after that, you move on and you start thinking, okay, what's next? And for me, I didn't know. And I got a really good piece of advice from, of all people, former Inquirer reporter, John Keysweater, who's now with WVXU, who got let go from the Inquirer, which is where I'm working now. You want to talk about full circle. He called me, he still covers the media, and he was asking what happened. And I told him, and he said, can I give you a piece of advice? He said, say no to everything. Say no to everything for like a month. And I was like, okay. And at the time, I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. I need a job. I need it right now. I just got fired. I need a job. And so what he meant was this. If anyone had offered me any, even like remotely decent, halfway decent job at that point, out of fear and concern and the unknown, I would have said yes. And I think that would not have been my best choice. So I said no to everything for a month. I said no to meetings and coffees and lunches and everything. And then I started saying yes to everything because I'd gotten my head back under me. I'd figured things out. What am I going to do? What do I want to do? And in that kind of month, what I did was, it's a lot of self-recollection and kind of actualization of what I thought I knew about the job that defined me, whether I would have admitted that it defined me or not, and what was real. And what I mean is this: if you'd ask me, hey, do you like your job? I'm like, yes, it's awesome. I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do since 5th grade. It's all I've ever wanted. But in looking at it and looking at the pieces of the job, there were parts of it I didn't like. So look, I've got paper right here. I'm a paper person. I write things down. And so I wrote things down. I dumped my brain. I basically had brain dump after brain dump. And what I realized was this. I wrote down the things I liked about my job and the things I didn't. And I realized that things that I didn't like outnumbered the things that I did like. Let me tell you what I like the most: the paycheck. I want to be honest with you. A lot of what when people go through transitions, it is, they call it the golden albatross. That paycheck is a really big deal. And I understand that. I've lived it. I'm still living it, frankly. But what I realized is the things that I did love, telling stories and meeting people and sharing things that are happening in our community that don't get shared in many places. Those were the things I wanted to do. I didn't love the hours. There's no 9 to 5 in television, so that wasn't an option. So I picked the next best thing, which was weirdly 3 a.m. to 11 o'clock. And believe me, that is the next best shift. Otherwise, you're there till the middle of the night. But what I realized is the things that I liked, I could find something that could fit that, and I could get rid of, at least that was my goal, to get rid of the things I didn't. I liked the people I worked with. I liked the ability to tell stories and to educate and entertain people. So there I was, and realizing in this kind of brain dump of what it was I was looking for. Like I said yes to everything. I said yes to coffees and lunches and emceeing events. I met with people in fields I would never be good at, but I just wanted to see what was out there. Because I hadn't, it's funny when Natalie said this is like the advanced, job category. I've looked for one job in 23 years. So I don't know that I'm really qualified. I didn't have a resume. I didn't have anything. I worked in this same building in the same desk for so long. And so I, knew that there were other things out there. So I really just wanted to broaden my spectrum and really see what was out there. And I met some great people doing that are still contacts, and that, who knows if work down the line will swing that direction or not. So yeah, so the first thing I learned was saying no to everything, then yes to everything. Secondly, past contacts mean future connections. And I know anybody who networks knows this. And I'm not saying go into every day thinking it's a job interview. That's not it at all, but it could be. And I know that once I really started thinking of, the people that, not that you want to look at every single person, so that person can help me down the line. That wasn't it at all. But the people that you got along with, and the people that in fact, my Inquirer job, for example, where right now I do Facebook Lives for the Inquirer, and we'll get into that awful elevator pitch there. It's not really the greatest explanation of exactly what I do, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But that job came from a relationship 20 years ago when I first came to town, when I was doing sports. And Michael Perry, who is now vice president there at the Inquirer, he was covering Xavier sports, and I was too. And we struck up a friendship, and 20 something years later, here he is offering me a job that doesn't exist. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. So we met one day, and that's what happened. And as far as we can tell, this job that I have where I do Facebook Lives for the Inquirer, my official title is Family Forward Reporter. But as far as we can tell, I'm the only one in the country doing it. And so that means I get to kind of create it, mold it to what my strengths are, which is, I like talking, I like telling stories, and I like meeting people. So that's kind of where we've shifted that job. But yes, so those past contacts mean future connections. I also do a podcast, as I just mentioned, with the Northern Kentucky Chamber. That job came from meeting the folks at the Chamber through a billion Northern Kentucky things. I always fly the flag of Northern Kentucky. I'm a huge advocate of this region, and that came through. And I've been working with him for more than a year now. So the initial, my old school thinking of, you pick a job, you stay there, and as my parents said, you stay there till you retire. We all know that kind of work that's not the way we all work now. A lot of us want to move around, want to move up, want to try new things. And those transitions can be difficult, but those past connections can really help move those transitions along. So the other thing, and I'm going to get to that job title here right now, that I learned is don't worry about what other people think. I was fired in a private setting, but it became extremely public. And it was on social media. It was all over the place. It was on radio. It was in newspapers, and it was weird. It was just extremely weird that there I was having to, say, hey, it's going to be great, minutes after what in my mind, my career was over. So at first, the hard part, and again, if you had asked me, I would have said, no, my job doesn't define me. I'm so many more things than a news anchor. But when someone was to introduce me to someone at a party or at a networking event, it would be, this is Kathrine Nero. She's the morning anchor on the news. That's how it would go. Not, she's got 2 great kids and she lives in Northern Kentucky and she used to work at Graceland or whatever. No, it was always, she's a news anchor. And as much as you don't want your job to define you, I understand completely, especially with the jobs that I know a lot of you have. As you move up that chain, it does define you whether you want it to or not. So that was tough for a while when people would say, hey, what are you doing now? And it's like, well, I do a Facebook Live for the Inquirer, and I also do a podcast for the Northern Kentucky Chamber. I got over it really quickly, though, because, I don't, especially in this world of social media, I don't care what my neighbor's best friend's 3rd grade cousin's brother, thinks of what my job title is. And my job title, again, Family Forward Reporter, doesn't exactly explain what I do, but that was the title of the position that was there. But what I have been able to do since, it's been 2 years now, is really use the things that I liked on a new platform, telling stories in a new way. And I have found that my brain just it took a couple of months, I'll be honest. but my brain just started firing on all cylinders. And a lot of that is because of another thing I learned, and that is that education is as easy as it has ever been. From things like this to the 7 million podcasts that I've listened to or webinars that I've taken, and just to learn a little something about something else, whether it was, best practices for Instagram or how to start an e-course or whatever it is that I'm thinking in my head, like maybe down the line, this is something I want to do. Or just how other people have transitioned from being fired or pivoting jobs or whatever it might be. Education is so simple right now. And really, I think coronavirus has kind of really brought that to a head, that things like this can happen. And you don't even, frankly, have to put on pants to learn it, right? You can just sit here in front of your computer and learn so much. And what that has done is really opened up. Like I said, I've got a job that didn't exist 2 years ago. And it's been incredible to learn on the job and to learn about various and sundry different things. We always say in news, you got to know a little about a lot. And that has really helped in this process. Sometimes those podcasts or those webinars can serve as cheerleaders. Sometimes they can be tough love. Sometimes it's inspiration, but whatever it is, it can kind of help you propel forward in that transition and learning more about yourself and learning more about what you might want to do. Because like I said, if I had not been fired, I would still be there. I would tell you right now, yeah, it's awesome. I love it. But in the back of my mind, there would be all those things that I didn't want to tell myself. And a lot of it is, that comfort level of, I knew exactly where my parking spot was. I would park in the same spot every morning, and I would walk up the same steps, and I knew exactly how many steps it took to get to my desk because I'd done it so frequently. And that comfort and that familiarity is hard to leave, especially if you're trying to make that decision on your own. And so that is it's a tough thing. When it's made for you, it's a little bit easier. But at the same time, you also are going through the same emotions, which is, okay, what next? How do I do this? What does this transition look like? And I realized that, I know I needed challenges, firing, maybe not so much, but challenges nonetheless. And anytime you're in a job for a great length of time, you realize that maybe you need to try something new. And again, I know that financial security is a big part of that as well, especially, right now, so many people are dealing with furloughs and dealing with being laid off as a result of the coronavirus. And part of what I also learned in moving on and moving forward in a very public firing is being okay with saying it. For a long time, it felt really awful to say, well, I was fired. People still, to this day, will come up to me and say, well, why aren't you at Channel 9? And it's like, well, at first it was like, well, I just left. And I'm like, you know what? I have nothing to be embarrassed about. I was fired. And then it shuts them up. They don't ask a follow-up, I'll tell you that. Or people will come up and say, oh, I watch you every morning on TV. And I'm like, no, you don't. That shows you, it's been a while, but okay. The brand equity is still there, still got it. But it is very nice, and I appreciate it when people do that. But what that tells me, though, is that my insistence on, I have to have this title, that people don't even notice when you don't have that title. And so once I've owned it, once I would say I was fired and started saying it, and it lost its kind of spikes, right? So it hurt for a little while. It doesn't hurt anymore to say that. And now here we sit almost 2 years later. It was the end of July in 2018 when I was fired, and I'm healthier, I'm happier, I sleep like a regular person. I wake up without an alarm. It's kind of remarkable, but it's also, it has allowed me, this change in job, to do things I never would have been able to do. We started our own website. Chris Riva and I are my former co-anchor. We're still working on that, getting that up and going. I'm doing work as a kind of an influencer on social media. I just finished today a video for CVG, kind of just a project to show people how to fly healthy at CVG, separate from the Inquirer, separate from the Chamber, just as a, hey, come out and do this job and let's see, see if it helps people feel more comfortable flying. I like being able to do that, to cover the things and tell the stories about the things that are important to the people of Northern Kentucky, that in a situation where the media in general has a smaller staff, and I know that firsthand, but when the media has a smaller staff, things don't get covered. And so I like to be able to help those things get covered. And so that's been a lot of fun. I feel like my creativity is back flowing again. I'm working more efficiently. I love what I do. And, you know, I don't know that I would have been able to say that if I was still in my old job right now. You know, if you're considering a transition, and again, mine was considered for me. It's like when you're voluntold to do something, mine was done for me. But if you're considering a transition, or even if you are in the same boat that I was, you know, you've got to look at these things, I think, through a couple of lenses. And if you look at it specifically, you know, is what you're about to do fulfilling? Is it fun? And is it, you know, appropriate and financially secure, and, you know, make you financially secure and all of that? I'm not saying quit your job and go, you know, buy an ice cream truck. But if it's something that will fulfill you, that fulfillment factor, I don't think I had for a while. And I didn't think I realized that it had been gone. That's a huge part of it. It's so rewarding to be fulfilled by what you do. So I'm very happy to do that. And in addition to all those other things I'm doing, I'm also able to do media trainings, kind of like this, to help organizations learn how to deal with the media, virtually and in person. And so it's just been a real blessing to find those little bits and pieces and not come home just dog tired from a day of work and feel like I can't do anything until I go back to work the next day. I think the sleep has a lot to do with it. But yeah, there's been a lot of lessons in these almost 2 years, you know, and again, thinking back to how I felt 2 years ago, I never thought that I would get to this point where it's like, yeah, it's fired, big deal. This is my new job and I'm moving on. I have not missed my old job the way I had expected to miss it. I miss some of the people, absolutely. But I keep in contact with so many of them. That helps a great deal. But what I realize now is, you know, when you're in the trenches and and those of you who've changed jobs know this, you think, okay, this is the way things are done because this is the way it's done right here, right now. Then when you get out, you're like, wait a minute, there's so many other ways you can do this. It's like your blinders are off. And so that's where I feel like I am. Blinders are off. And again, each month I find that, you know, I'm learning more, I'm doing more, I'm feeling like I'm more fulfilled, and I am, again, just ecstatically grateful to the Inquirer for, you know, taking a chance on a really weird job and letting me do it. And it's been really great for both of us. It's helped them on social media, it's helped me as well, and I'm able to do the things that I like at a place I like, with people I like, and it's really, really been a wonderful, wonderful experience. That is my story. Do you guys, if anyone has any questions about that part of it, I'm happy to answer. And if not, I do have some tips for you on looking good on Zoom and all that fun stuff. So Natalie, I'll let you make the call. Are we good? No questions?
We are good on the questions right now. And if anyone wants to go ahead and post them, we'll answer them through the videos. But right now we're good.
One of the things I've learned in my exodus is how to appropriately screen share. So I'm going to do that right now. This has been fun over the last 3 months. I know so many of, you know, we've been working at home. Kids have been taking school at home, all of this. And, you know, there are benefits and drawbacks to all of it, but I find this virtual meeting part of it, as much as I don't want to do it for 8 hours a day, and I know a lot of us have to do that, it has been just a wonderful part of kind of getting this together, because it's been really great to learn and to see. All right, I'm gonna get you right here. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna move this guy over a little bit. All right, so we are going to, I am taking this kind of in the vein of virtual interviews. This works for anything you're doing on Zoom though. And I've been checking you guys out. I see you guys are looking pretty good. I got to tell you, you might not need all of this guidance, but nonetheless, I will give it to you. So here's the deal. Essentially, rocking a virtual interview or a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever you got, really it's what I'm going to kind of show you today is walk you through some ways that you can look and feel your best on camera for virtual interviews. So as everything does, it all starts before you even open up that laptop to start your interview. All right, so here's how it goes. So here's what I would tell you to do. Test your tech. And I'm sure you know this by now, but especially in the category of interviews, you want to use the same device at the same time of day in the same setting. So like, for example, I sit here live a lot on our morning, on my Facebook Live, which is at 10 a.m. on Monday through Friday. I was remiss. You guys got to watch it Monday through Friday on the Inquirer's Facebook page. I've never done one at night. So as I was sitting here, I'm like, I'm telling them to test this out. I don't know what the lighting's going to be like. I know it's at 10 in the morning, but so that's what you want to do. You want to use the same device on the same day in the same setting to make sure your internet's working okay. Make sure you don't need an update on your browser, which sometimes happens. And you want to do a dry run. So I, in fact, did this about 6:30 today just to make sure my screens were sharing and all of that good stuff. So, you know, open up your own Zoom meeting, see what you look like, see what you sound like, all of that good stuff. And again, update your browser or the software if necessary. Every once in a while, Zoom will do that. They won't even tell you. Limit distractions. We'll get more into that coming up in just a little bit. And ensure your angle and lighting are flattering and audio is good. So here's the deal. And apologies to any real estate professionals in the group here. Your interviewers are basing their first impressions on how you appear on camera. And if you're like, wait a minute, that's so shallow. They're doing it when you walk in the room, right? If you're interviewing in person, they're still basing a first impression on how you shake hands and how you make eye contact. You can't do that in person. So you've got to do that through the laptop, through your computer. So if they can't see you or hear you appropriately, they will not pay attention. So find the right location with the right lighting, the right sound, and the right framing. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Number one, find your light. The easiest and best thing I will tell you is find a window and face it. It is better to have a weird looking background and a well-lit face than a really cool background, but a super dark face because you can't see anything. So for example, I'm going to show you this right now. So I'm here, and so I am facing a window. Now, I've got this beautiful view here. I hate that sounds really self-centered, but if I were to turn this way so you can see the view, do you see how poorly I'm lit here? And I actually have a light on me. I'm cheating. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Look how bad that is, right? So even though that's a better view than my room back here, which has an unfinished puzzle on that table that you can't see, nonetheless, it's better lighting if you're facing that window, and I am right up on that window. So that is number one. So number one, you want to find your light. Here we go. Next, after finding your light, so now you got that going for you. You want to, let me make sure this guy's, there we go. Watch your headroom. All right. So you want a little bit of room above your head. You see it right there, just a little bit, like an inch, right? As you're looking at it in a screen, and a small screen. Not like the guy on the bottom, right? And so the reason for that is you want to be the center of attention. So think of your face in the center or slightly above center of frame, okay? So again, doesn't matter what's behind you. Well, it does, but not like to this extent. Like what you want to do is make sure your face is the center of attention. You want that interviewer or whomever you're speaking to virtually to remember, how great your eye contact was and what you were doing and all of this, but you don't want them to say, hey, remember what their ceiling looked like, right? So you want to make sure that you are the focal point of that frame. So get on my eye level. Let me show you another little trick I have. Okay, so I'm sitting here at what is like a typical, height table. I'm going to move this over and you're going to see what I'm going to talk about. So if I were to put this laptop down straight on the table, this is what it would look like. What are we looking at here? You're looking up my nose. You're looking at my ceiling. This is not really the greatest angle, right? So my daughter painted for me with my own Bitmoji on it, as you can see. This is an Amazon box. I was using a cottage cheese container for a little while, but this is an Amazon box, and all I do is I put it, I'm going to show you. Look at my little trick here. I'll explain why I've got a blanket back here too. So I put it right here. I put this right on top of it, and suddenly that is eye level. What you want is the camera to be eye level or close to it. A little bit higher would be okay, but not too high. So you want it about eye level. So there you go. So get on my level. That is exactly what I mean. You want to make sure that that camera is right at eye level. All right. Next. Oops, let me go back. Again, we're going to talk about limiting distractions. Okay. You want to really check your shot's background. I mean, you think it's all right, but then, you know, you don't want dirty socks in the background. You don't want your kids' shoes. That's happened to me. You know, you don't want anything that's going to distract in the background. So really check, especially if you're not in a room where there's a wall immediately behind you. Like if it's open space, you just want to make sure your dishwasher is not open, you know, all of that good stuff, right? So really check it out. Turn off your ringer or turn on do not disturb. That seems like a simple thing, but you know, I'm the type of person who always has my ringer off. On the off chance I have it on, I would forget, and it has rung before as I was live. So you want to make sure that you have that ringer off. Make sure there's no noise nearby, and that seems logical, but what that means is you may not want to set up as your neighbor is mowing a lawn. You may not want to be right by the air conditioner or right next to something that's loud, like a refrigerator if it's extremely loud or anything like that. And also check your Wi-Fi or cell connection. Sometimes, and you can obviously do this on your phone as well, if you're deciding to do either a meeting or an interview on your phone, sometimes turning off your Wi-Fi will give you a better signal than leaving it on, because the phone is trying to figure out, do I do cell, do I do Wi-Fi? I run into this sometimes in the mornings with my Facebook Lives. And so you have to sometimes just turn it off. It's better that way. So that's another reason why you want to do that dry run, to make sure that all is well. All right, here's some other things to remember. Speak at a regular volume. And a lot of people will want to shout or maybe be quiet, one or the other, because like maybe their spouse or their kids are in the other room. But if you're doing a job interview like this, it might seem a little bit odd to someone. You know what I mean? Like, so what are they hiding over there, right? Use earbuds with a mic if there's ambient noise. So you've all either, you know, the AirPods or just a regular wired earbud with a mic. It, especially if there's more than a couple of people on a meeting or an interview, that really helps kill the ambient noise. And sometimes there's an echo. You hear that every once in a while. That really helps a lot. So, and it's perfectly acceptable. You can buy an external mic for a microphone or for a laptop, but it's unnecessary if you've got those earbuds. Perfectly fine. Okay. Use a sound muffler if it's echoey. That, friends, is my blanket. I'm going to show this to you. So here we go. So I'm back here. I'm going to show you. This is my blanket. I have this fleece blanket that I have put up here with chip clips. That's right. But the reason is this room doesn't have carpet, and it doesn't have a lot of fabric in it, and it's kind of echoey. And if I'm talking into a piece of glass because I'm facing my window, it's going to sometimes it sounds really echoey. And this just muffles it a little bit. So again, this is an odd setup, but my family's used to it by now. The blanket, I've got the Amazon box, and it just muffles it a little bit. So that really, really helps. Now, I was talking about lighting. I do have this little guy, this little ring light. It's a little baby ring light. I like it because I wasn't sure how dark it was going to get, so I wanted to have it on. It's this thing, I want to say, is like, I think like $30 on Amazon or something like that. They have some that'll clip to the top of your laptop. That way, wherever you are, you're going to have good lighting. Like if you are like, well, I've got good lighting here, but there's a bunch of distractions back here, you can flip it around and have that light in front of you, and you'll be in good shape. Ring lights are very flattering. They love the ring light. It's a very good thing. So that's another option for you. In addition to a sound muffler, towels will work, whatever you got. In addition to that, you want to test your video first. So this is especially if you're using, well, it can be if you're using a phone or a laptop. So if you're using a phone, what you want to do is as you test your shot, if you're on photo, it's more of a squared off shot. But if you're on video, it's a 16:9, like what we see on television type shot. So you want to make sure you're testing it on 16:9, because then you can really see what you see on the edges of the screen. If you're using a phone, if you're using your laptop, you just open up your camera and look at yourself, see what it looks like. Start a Zoom meeting that's just you if you want to, if you really want to test it out. And then also be ready to go at least 5 minutes early. And listen, I know it's super easy to forget this sort of thing, but you would show up to a job interview, 15 minutes early probably? So in this case, it's the same sort of thing. Show up a few minutes early. More than likely, you'll be waiting, but I'd rather wait. You know, that's me. I'd rather wait than be late, right? I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it certainly did. All right, so next, look at the lens. I can't tell you how frequently this happens. People get enamored by themselves and they want to look at the image, right? You want to look at the person talking, whether it's you or the interviewer. But really what you got to do is raise your eyes up to that camera. The camera is the eye, right? So that's what you got to remember. So don't look at you or your interviewer's image. You want to look at that camera. Now you can minimize the window and move it really close to the camera, if that will help you. Another TV trick that people would do is they would put a picture, like of whomever, doesn't matter. It can be anybody from your mom to Bart Simpson. Stick it right there by the camera, and so you're talking to that person. So if it feels weird looking into just a black square, you can instead look at a person. But whatever it is, make sure that's where you're looking and not down, because again, we're back to that, all of that, those body language cues that you can't give in person, but you can give over the interwebs, as they say. So you want to look at the lens, not at the person. Sit. Okay. I'm in a spinny chair right now, okay? But this is not what you want to do in an interview, is it? You look fidgety. You look like, what's going on over there, right? So my trick is you sit on the edge of your seat. You sit up a little bit taller that way. In person, it works a little bit better, but it still works virtually. It also prevents you from spinning around a little bit, right? So you want to keep as still as you can, obviously. So that's the easy part there. Now, body language, I know you guys know, right? I know you know.
Kathrine, I think I have somebody accidentally put their mute button on real quick, so I'm just going to remind everybody if you could please keep your mutes on for now. Thank you. Okay, we're good.
Okay, so let's talk, and we all know body language in person. It's a little bit different on camera. I always call it, you need to be right on the edge of cheesiness, right? Right there, whether it's voicing something, like if you're reading something, or if you are, in this case, interviewing. You need to be slightly more animated than you think, because what may translate in person is not going to translate on television. The camera sees things differently than the eye does, and so you need to play to that camera. And I know a lot of this sounds exceptionally, one-dimensional, but this is your chance to make that good impression. So be slightly more animated than you think, and smile as the meeting is launching. That's going to make a big difference, because the first thing they're going to see is you smiling, not like, what's happening? Oh, there he is. And then, you kind of perk up. And also, we all have Zoom fatigue. I get it. But don't let Zoom fatigue take over. And what that means is, I know this is so common now. We all sit and we look at our computers all day. We get to the point where it's like, okay, here's another meeting, and you start to slouch, and you start, whatever it might be. But what you should need to remember is that, obviously this is a big interview or a meeting, whatever it might be. So remember that you need to present yourself in the same manner as if you were in that office. And again, for an interview, you want to wear comfortable professional attire. Again, pants optional. No one's going to know. The beauty of doing this virtually, though, and again, there's some benefits that come with this. The beauty of doing this virtually is that you can have notes. Like if you've looked up something on their business or their company or their history of how they've done certain projects, whatever it might be, you can have those with you and refer to them pretty easily, but don't read them and don't memorize them. That's going to come across extremely uncomfortable on camera. And this is one that I know people forget. Know how to turn this thing off. Whatever the thing is, know how to turn it off, and then make sure you do. If you've got to shut that laptop and walk out of the room just to be sure, do it. But be sure you know how to turn off your program, whichever one you're using. Okay, so I just shared my screen here. If you're doing that, and there's a chance you might, especially in the second and third interview, be asked to share a screen with a presentation. And if you do it, you want to watch to make sure the other tabs that are open, right? You don't want their competitor's website, up there on a tab that they can see. And then also remember that your interview might be recorded, which I know does nothing more than make people more nervous in an interview, that somebody could be passing this around and showing other people. But what that means is a really good interview could be sent around to other people as well. So you need to just be aware that might be happening. And if it does, be sure that whatever you're saying, you're comfortable with that being shared. And so you want to watch what you're saying and how you're saying it. Of course, you're going to know if these things are being recorded. You can see it on your end and they will tell you, but nonetheless, just as you're preparing for that interview, just to be aware of that might be helpful. But again, just like everything else, just like in-person interviews, roll with any interruptions. My dog has walked in here during a live shot and scratched his ear and his collar jingles for like a solid 5 minutes in the middle of a live broadcast. And what can you do about it? But just kind of roll with it. And above all else, as in any interview, be yourself. And sometimes rolling with those distractions and proving to an employer in this situation, in this day and age, that you can roll with distractions at home and elsewhere. That could be an unintended benefit. It could really help you out in the long run. But that's about it. If you guys have any questions about any of this, whether it's etiquette for on camera or any of the other, please feel free to share. Natalie, is there anything else you'd like me to cover?
Kathrine, I was just checking to make sure. There's a few comments like that you're going to be the next Oprah. So
that's very kind. It's funny though, like here I am saying, hey, check and make sure it looks good. And then as you can see, the sun is setting and I've got this crazy, I need to maybe face this way now and put the camera over here. But hopefully
yes.
Your interviews will not be, as the sun is setting. Hopefully it's
okay.
Here in the day. That'll be much.
Yes. Someone asked a question about what would be good colors to wear and not to wear in the interviewing process?
I think that number one, I am a fan of whatever is comfortable. And again, there are some benefits to doing this virtually. You don't have to wear things that are uncomfortable, buttoned coats or, Spanx and tight dresses, whatever it is, that's uncomfortable. All you got to do is look good from from here up. So wear something that's comfortable, something that will make you stand out from the background. So in this room, I might not want to wear light blue, because I might just kind of blend away. The whole idea is just to put your best foot forward. So whatever you're most comfortable in. If people say, oh, you look really good in blue or red or whatever, maybe that's your color. And somebody was asking about makeup as well. Typically, on camera, you would wear more makeup, but this is for women or men, I shall not judge. But if you're using natural light, and really if you're not, regular makeup is fine. But again, that's why you want to do that test run. You may look at it and go, oh, I thought this looked good. I'm not so sure, or I need a little bit of extra light. And speaking of which, if you do need extra light, if you don't want to go out and buy anything, you can use everything from, I've used a laptop with a white screen, like a secondary laptop. It just kind of bounces light back at you. You can use a floor lamp, whatever you got that will, aluminum foil. I'm telling you, I've used that too. Because if there's a shadow on one side, you could put like aluminum foil here and it would bounce this light back to you. I'm telling you, it's like MacGyvering this thing. So that's basically it. But yeah, as far as clothing goes, solid colors generally look better on camera than patterns. And if you are going to wear a pattern, and I do wear patterns, but if you are going to wear a pattern, make sure it's big enough that it's not going to, like it's called moire, where, kind of looks like it's moving a little bit. If the stripes are too small, sometimes it looks like it's moving. You just want to maybe, keep it, you want to make sure that the attention is on your face and on what you're saying, as opposed to what you're wearing.
Gotcha. All right, we have another one here. If someone asks you to stand and you prefer not to, what would you say?
In a virtual interview?
Yes.
That's a great question. I will say this about standing. I always found when reporting that when I was standing, I was more animated and it gave me more energy. So if you struggle with low energy, maybe that's a good thing. Otherwise, if they ask you to, like, if you really want the job, I think I'd stand. But, if that's an unusual request, I think. But if it were to happen, it may actually, again, if you struggle with, kind of keeping yourself motivated or energized, it might actually help a little bit. It won't be so if you're standing.
Okay, several people have asked, what are your makeup best practices? Any quick makeup tips for women?
I would say, especially on camera, make sure you've got something on your eyes because they tend to fall away. Because I have a second camera here, a second laptop I'm looking at, and so you can see, the camera laptops, or the laptop cameras rather, are not as great as iPhone cameras are, frankly. So you might want to consider that. You might want to check both to see which looks better if you have the option of doing a virtual interview on a phone. Some people don't like it because it's so small, and I totally understand that, especially if you're sharing screens, it gets very confusing. But I would say make sure you've got something on your eyes. I think regular makeup is fine, maybe just a little tiny bit more. But again, that's why that dry run is really important to see. Like, because sometimes I'll look at myself in the bathroom mirror, then I come out here, I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, let's fix this up. This is not right. So do that dry run. I think a regular makeup though will be just fine.
Okay. Then what's your thoughts about using a virtual background as opposed to wherever you are, like we are today?
In a job interview, I would say use wherever you are, just because I always feel like, because I know Microsoft Teams has that option to blur the background. I'm always like, what are they hiding back there? Like, and I also find it a bit distracting. Now, if it's a meeting, if it's a virtual happy hour, you be on a beach. I see Greg up here. He's on a beach. I want to be there. Catherine's got a nice some flowers behind her, some plants behind. Yeah, absolutely. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, if you can, in a job interview, you want to try to present that as professionally as possible.
Good to know.
Limit the distractions.
Okay. Lynn Luberty asked, have you ever been stumped, got lost in a thought? What did you do? How did you recover?
Yeah. I think I did it tonight. Yeah. No, one of the benefits of talking on live television for 20-something years is that you find a way just to keep moving. And personally, I think that you're the only one who knows exactly what you were going to say. So as long as you're connecting thoughts together in a relevant way, it may not be exactly what you meant. They're going to be fine. As long as you get your point across, they're going to understand what you're saying. And you can always go back and reiterate it. And there's always little tricks like saying, as I previously said, or just a recap, or whatever you want to do. If reiterating what you were saying before might help you remember what the third or fourth thing is, you can always do that as well. And also the other part of it is, don't be afraid to have notes. I had notes tonight, and I find myself, I'm the type of person that if I type them or write them, I kind of remember what I was going to say, but they're always there just in case. There's no shame in having notes or an outline or anything like that.
Cool. Okay, Mark, Leonard asked, how did you go about, this is going back to your career transition, how did you go about figuring out what you wanted to do and not wanted to do outside of your comfort zone, or, let me make sure I got this right, are simply setting the path of least resistance? One of the struggles was, frankly, the job I have now didn't exist. So I had to look at, and I knew that, the job that I did have, I wasn't going to be able to have because of non-compete clauses and things like that. So I knew news anchor wasn't going to be the thing I was going to do next. So I was like, okay, what's going to happen next? And so that's where that brain dump helped. And I wrote down the things there's that whole idea of the Venn diagram. So it's like what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what people ask you about, and wherever those things meet, those are the things that are those are your superpowers. And as it turns out, that's why when Michael Perry said, hey, what about doing Facebook Lives, kind of catered toward a family audience? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I've been pitching, a family segment, at my station for 10 years, and everybody's like, man, nobody wants that. So I'm like, this is perfect. And so it was just like everything was kind of lined up in synergy. But I think that it's about finding the things that if you haven't had that transition made for you, finding the things that you really want to do and are passionate about, and making sure that those are included in whatever that next step is. And again, I know that especially with the level of people we have here, you're not opening up the newspaper or opening up a website and finding your job listed necessarily. But that might be because it doesn't exist. So, I've had several friends who have gotten jobs that were listed as one thing, and they had this other set of skills
And the company was like, you know what, we're going to gear it more toward those sets of skills because that's something we didn't think we could find. So there's a lot of ways to go about that, and find those different and maybe jobs that don't exist right now.
Okay. Another young person has a question. Gabrielle, any advice you have for college students in media and broadcasting who are looking for jobs outside of the news, how to find those opportunities and best ways to network?
Well, number one, good for you looking outside of news. I'm not sure where local news is headed. I know that the staffing is extremely much smaller than it was 5 years, definitely 10 years ago. And as we all move to kind of different platforms to get our news, it's good that you're looking at different vantage points and different ways to kind of apply your skills. I think video is one of those things that every single company forever will need, whether that is a social media manager to produce videos, whether that's a photographer, whether that's a reporter to write to videos or to shoot them, him or herself, because that happens a lot. Video is the way stories are told now. And whether that's in 15-second segments or 7-minute stories or hour-long documentaries, whatever it is, that's, to me, extremely important. The other thing I would say is do any job and every job in and around the field, because much like myself, something may come up and you're like, wait a minute, that's something I'd really like to do. Or with as quickly as this industry is changing, a job may exist 2 months from now that doesn't exist now, and you being in on the ground floor of that might give you a boost. I always, especially students who are just graduating now, they've grown up with social media. They know it so much better than so many others that's a huge benefit moving into a place, because that's not the first job that people will hire, that businesses want to hire. Like hiring a social media manager is pretty far down the line, but that social media aspect can be everything from tutorials to Instagram videos to website videos, again, to documentaries. So learn it all, focus on video.
Great. Okay, we have another one here. Hi, Kathrine. What tips do you have for someone like me who wants to flip the switch and talk to companies about a role I believe I can fill that they might not even know they need? I am trying to design the role I can do best based on my skills, but I'm not seeing it on job boards. And that's from Jason Martin.
That's a great question. I would say present them with evidence as to why they need it. Here, I know in similar circumstances, and it's different, but I wanted, this was back when Luminosity was new, downtown, CSO, all up on Music Hall. I had to fight tooth and nail to get this, like we wanted to carry it live. And the only way I could get them to see my side of it was to put together a video and a presentation for my boss saying, okay, look, if you sell these commercials, you can make this much and I'll do this work. Like it was literally like a game plan. So if there's a way that you can take like whatever the role is that you want, if you could take a project, a problem and solve it, and especially if there's a financial or monetary benefit to this, and show like through efficiency or whatever else it is that you can solve this issue, or how much better this would be if this job were created and how great you would be at it. I think it's the employers like you to come with the solution, not just the problem. So if you come with that solution, I think that could go a long way.
Kathrine, you just described something we talk about all the time now when we do a class called The Art of the Cover Letter, but we refer to cover letters now as pain letters, where you are targeting the pain that a company is experiencing and showing how you can alleviate it. So that's a great example. Okay. Anne asked, what would you say to individuals that are older trying to enter the media ring? What advice would you provide?
Media in general, I don't think there is an age limit. Here's what I know. People of all generations are consuming media, and media that is going to be consumed by a 26-year-old is not going to be consumed by a 66-year-old. But it doesn't mean either is more important. Because let's be fair, we're all going to have more money hopefully at 66 than at 26. So advertisers are looking toward older demographics, and I hate to even use that term. It used to be that advertisers looked at 25 to 54-year-olds. Now that number is up to 64 and older. And so media has to target all of those audiences. And if you are in one of those audiences, you know the unique challenges and interests that audience has. And I think that's a huge benefit, because if someone else doesn't mean you can't learn it or you can't figure it out, but you're more in tune with it. And you also know the challenges and the pain points, as Natalie pointed out, that different demographics have. A lot of the news is geared toward younger people. It is, because that's the audience that advertisers covet. But at the same time, you still have to serve those older audiences. And so I think that there's an audience both as a media creator and a media consumer of all generations.
Cool. The next question I think you've already answered in talking, but this was specific to actually interviewing. How about the hands? Do you keep them down?
Obviously not. Me and Fast Forward is just this. It's just a bunch of hands flapping around. It's awful. I'm Italian, I can't help it. But, I think it goes back to being yourself. I always talk with my hands. I think that if you talk with your hands, talk with them. I mean, if you try not to do something that is so natural to you, it may come across stilted, and it may come across, whether it's arrogance or, disinterest or something like that. So you want to, whatever you do, make sure that you come across as yourself. Now, you can move your hands below the camera. I'm like this, but like if your camera, again, is up high enough on the level, you can move your hands and feel comfortable, but it's not distracting as well.
Cool. And Carlos Paez asked, what is the diameter of your lighting?
This one's a little one. I have a big one and a little one. This one, it's a good question. I'm going to measure it for you, Carlos. Looks like it's 8 inches. This one, and this is not going to light a whole lot. This is just like a little fill light. This is just going to help a little bit. There are some really good ones on Amazon that are bigger, that like your camera will latch onto the middle, like in the middle. Those are, I think, like 18 inches. That's all you'll ever need. You can get one light and use it forever and ever and ever. And then the beauty of it is you can be live or be on anywhere, virtually anywhere you need to be.
Okay. Now I have one from Tazos Georgopoulos from Breakthrough Performance, our awesome teacher of our Black Belt Sigma class that we always like to send people to. He says, Kathrine, regarding the job search, as you were meeting networking, can you discuss your experiences as to qualifying some of your contacts? In essence, I had situations where some people I knew very well were not as helpful, even though they could put me in touch with decision makers. Any comments on this?
Yes, I think that, again, my education these days stems a lot from podcasts. And I was just listening to one the other day, and I wish I could remember which one it was. But regarding this, there are people who are going to be really well connected that are not going to help you. Then there's going to be people who are kind of connected, but are willing to help you. Those are your people. Because you never, I don't know about anybody else. If you make the contact with that well-connected person and there's crickets, maybe you go again. But after that, like, you don't want to be begging for a job, essentially. But if there's that medium connected person who might be able to make a couple of phone calls, you don't know how well connected all of those people are. Again, I think it goes back to the people who are willing to step out and help. And a lot of them will be the people who've been through this before. And I think those are your people. And again, you can move your way up that chain one step at a time or multiple. So maybe that well-connected person or that mediumly connected person, but who's really interested in helping you out, might be able to kind of jumpstart that for you.
Good to know. Okay. Another specific tech question. What is the approximate distance between you and your laptop screen?
You know what? Mine's like an arm's length. I don't know if that helps you any. I think it's whatever is comfortable to you. And whatever, especially if, I think that a lot of it is what the other, sometimes you can see everybody side by side. If you look okay side by side, that's about all, all you need to worry about. I like it a little bit further back. That way I could feel like it's not right up on me. I don't feel like I'm staring. I'm a little farsighted too, so I think that's part of it as well. But if you move a little bit further back, it kind of gives the impression that you're talking to the person. You wouldn't be any closer if you think about it. Like you wouldn't be this close to someone trying to talk to them. So I don't know, arm's length away, maybe even further, but close enough that they can hear you appropriately.
Okay. Next question. How do you handle an awkward silence?
Well, in an interview situation, as long as I had finished my question, I would wait for the other person to start asking another one. But if it's more of a casual situation, more of a webinar type situation, if it's a short silence, it's one thing. And then you have the tech questions. Like every time I don't hear something, I worry that, everything's gone wonky and my computer's dead or something. So maybe if it's even, hey, are you still there? But if it's during an interview, I would pause. If they still don't say anything, maybe ask, is there anything else you'd like to know? Or is there something further you'd like to ask about that question or something like that?
Cool. I thought I saw one more here, one more specific. Well, I'm getting hit with tons of compliments for you.
That's very nice. Thank you.
Throw and make sure. One last one was speaking. How did you learn to adjust your Southern dialect?
Well, my husband will tell you that when I'm mad, it still comes out. So it's still there. I think it's just practice, over and over. But it's still there. And that's the other thing. It's like you can hear it, especially in something like this where I'm a little more casual than presenting news. It's, it is what it is. It's perfectly fine. But yeah, so it took a little bit of work, but that accent's hopefully far behind me.
Wonderful. All right. Hopefully I didn't miss any others. I think this has been absolutely wonderful, Kathrine. Everybody's thrilled to death to have you with us this evening. I just wanted to mention everybody through a new partnership we have with Strategic HR. You're going to be able, under our tools section on Job Search Central, to register to do a practice video interview. So you'll be able to send Strategic HR a resume and a job description. They will put together 4 questions to ask of you. They'll set up the video interview for you, and then they'll critique you afterwards. So we just want you to know that that's going to be a new service we're going to offer, and we're in the process of setting that up. So you can look for it under tools on the Job Search Central site. So that'll be great. And I think we have Cindy Eldred here with us tonight. She's a Northern Kentucky Accountability Group alumni who works at Strategic HR now. So we're happy to have her. So it has been wonderful, Kathrine. I hope you'll come back and visit again.
Yes, thank you guys so much. You guys are so sweet. I'm seeing all these comments in the chat. It's very sweet.
I'll save the chat for you. Okay.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your support of the Kenton County Public Library. Have a good night. Thanks, Kathrine. Bye-bye, everybody.